Most people never build a real personality. They build reactions, reactions to trends, reactions to pressure, reactions to loneliness, reactions to whatever gets them accepted faster. That's why so many people feel empty when they're alone. Silence exposes borrowed identities brutally. A person who truly knows themselves does not need constant distraction to avoid their own thoughts. But modern people are terrified of stillness. The second silence appears, they open social media, music, videos, messages, anything to avoid confronting themselves directly. Because deep down, many people realize they spent years becoming who they were rewarded for being, not who they actually are. That creates invisible exhaustion. Living as a performance always does. Most people unconsciously shape their personality around survival. At school, they become whatever avoids rejection. Online, they become whatever gains attention. In relationships, they become whatever keeps people interested. And after years of adaptation, they lose track of what's real. That's why modern identity feels fragile. One criticism destroys confidence. One breakup destroys self-worth. One failed goal creates an identity crisis. Because identities built on external reactions collapse when external conditions change. A strong identity is built differently, not through attention, through solitude. Through spending enough time alone to hear your real thoughts without outside influence constantly interrupting them. That's uncomfortable because solitude removes performance. There's nobody to impress there. That's why most people avoid it. They say they're bored alone. Usually, they're just unfamiliar with themselves. Another brutal truth: many people do not actually have opinions. They have absorbed opinions. Everything they believe was downloaded from social media, friends, trends, influencers, politics, or fear of exclusion. That's why crowds become dangerous psychologically. People would rather betray their own instincts than risk social isolation. Belonging controls behavior more than logic, always has. The rarest people are not the loudest. They are the people capable of thinking independently without needing constant approval. That kind of mind becomes difficult to manipulate. And society quietly pressures independent people back toward conformity constantly because independent thinkers disrupt systems. They ask uncomfortable questions. They resist emotional manipulation. They notice contradictions. Most people don't want truth, they want psychological comfort. Truth often feels isolating at first. That's why authenticity costs something. You lose fake connections, fake validation, fake belonging, but in return, you gain something more valuable: internal stability. A person who no longer needs to perform for acceptance becomes psychologically dangerous, calmer, harder to control, less desperate for approval. That changes everything because desperation is what keeps most people trapped. Desperate for attention, desperate for relationships, desperate for status, desperate to be understood. And desperation quietly destroys freedom. The people who become mentally strong usually experience one important shift. They stop building an identity for other people to consume. They start building a life they can respect privately. That difference is enormous because eventually everybody reaches a moment where external noise fades. No audience, no applause, no validation, just you and your own mind. And in that moment, people finally discover whether they built a real self or just a character designed to survive other people's opinions.